Hi everybody, Swamp Fox here. So this is going to be the next video in the guide series for the A-10C and the A-10C2. So for this one we're just going to concentrate on taxiing the A-10, getting on the runway, taking off, and then turning around and giving you some basics for landing. Landing is still not my strong suit in DCS, but I do get it down safely. So let's take a look and just dive right in. So we are in a fully started A-10C cockpit. You can see everything is extinguished, and we've got all of our lights, our EACs on, so we're ready to go. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is figure out exactly where you are in the airfield. Because, I mean, looking around here, you know, obviously I'm in a refueling and rearming area, but where's the runway? So the easiest way to do this is just go to your F10 map and then find what airbase you're at by clicking and dragging, zoom in, zoom out until you see where you're at. So there's me, and of course I'm facing this direction because just from context clues I know that we've got aircraft over here to my left, and those bunkers are really close. So we just need to make a right, go down to the main taxiway here and hang a left, and ride that all the way out to the runway and take off on runway 23. So we're going to go ahead and get that started. So the first thing you're going to want to do is press the nose wheel steering button on your flight stick. So I'm going to assume that you have all of your HOTAS commands bound, and I'm going to refer to them by the name from both the manual and the settings menu. So we're going to hit nose wheel steering, and now you'll see steering engaged has now been turned on. So that means whenever we use the left and right rudder, it's actually going to turn the nose wheel so that we can actually turn the aircraft, because without that turned on, just taxiing at low speed, there's not enough air going over the rudders in the back there to actually move the plane and steer it. So we're going to go ahead and give it a little bit of power. The A-10 actually does not have a parking brake, so we're just going to calmly and gently get it going, and you may have to feather the power a little bit to keep it rolling smoothly and not get too fast to the point where you're actually taking off or being unsafe rolling through the taxiways. So we're just going to keep it at a nice slow pace here, and you're going to use your left and right rudder. And if you have pedals, that's best, but a twist joystick or a separate axis or even keyboard buttons if you're hard up works just fine. But you're obviously going to be most smooth with pedals like I'm running with here. So we just keep the yellow line here centered in the HUD, and that's going to keep us from clipping our wings on anything that's too close to the side of the taxiway, like any errant light poles or vehicles, anything like that. So just a nice gentle taxi, and you can use this time too to set up your weapon profiles if you want to. You could go into the DSMS. I'll be doing a video on that shortly as well, how I like to set up my weapons and how to set up weapons in different ways to be able to achieve the mission that you're given. And we'll just go ahead and keep it how I like to have things sort of set up. I like to have the TAD on the left and the targeting pod on the right whenever it's possible. Except for, you know, when I'm in a combat situation, I'm using the left MFD for something, or if I'm setting up some sort of a profile or something in my DSMS. So just like a car, we're going to look both ways, make sure nobody's coming. And just gently keep on taxiing. And you can hear the engine winding up a little bit and winding back as I feather the throttle a little bit, just to keep it at a relatively steady speed. And we're a little bit off the center line here, so we'll just bring it back. And now that we've got a long straight here, you can accelerate a little bit. Don't get too crazy with this until you get used to the handling and being able to use the toe brakes. It's really easy to go faster than you're actually comfortable with or able to handle in the beginning. So we'll just keep this on running, and then if you want to, you can do a quick check on your F10 map. You can see we're heading in the right direction here, and just at the end of this taxiway, we'll do a loop. Not a full loop, of course, about a 90-degree turn, and then that will put us perpendicular and ready to taxi onto the runway. And we're not going to worry too much about air traffic control procedures or anything like that. Typically online, what you want to do is just use that F10 map to make sure that there's nobody actually taxiing the other direction so that you don't get stuck with them. And we're going to apply a little bit of toe brakes here to slow us down, or the corner. But the big thing is, I mean, if they have voice comms, obviously use voice comms, let them know that you're taxiing, for example, to runway 23. And then once you get out onto the runway and clear it, you know, let everybody know via voice comms that we're okay, and they can taxi onto the runway. The biggest thing here, and you'll see this line perpendicular to the taxiway here, we're going to stop in front of that, and we're going to check and make sure that nobody is actually coming in for a landing. So we're going to go ahead and use the toe brakes to stop us completely. And of course we're going to check left, we're going to check right, and we're also going to hit the F10 map real quick and just zoom out a bit so that you don't see any aircraft, you know, coming this way to land or coming in from this way to land. So we can see everything is clear now, so we're going to go ahead and taxi out onto the runway. And what you're going to want to do is put your flaps down. I usually like to use 10-degree flaps unless I'm absolutely loaded to the max, and then I'll use another set, another 10 degrees of flaps, but that should be plenty. So we're just going to calmly line up on the center line of runway 23 here. There we go. We're nice and centered. Like to stop completely, and this is where you want to do your final checks. Your ejection seat is armed. There are no lights on. We are good to go. So we're just going to smoothly throttle up to 100% power. There's no afterburner on the A-10, so max is fine. And you're going to want to leave the nose wheel steering on, but be ready to turn it off. Once the HUD speed indicator here starts creeping up and hits around 80 knots or so, that's when I like to hit the nose wheel steering button and turn it off. There's enough speed now that the rudders will work to move the plane, and using the nose wheel steering can be too violent if you're not very careful. So once we hit about 140 knots or so, I start to give just a little bit of very gentle back pressure on the stick, and you can see the nose trying to get off the ground. And we are clear of the ground, so we go ahead and raise our landing gear. And now that that is up and we've established a nice positive climb, we're about 6 degrees, and accelerating, we're going to go ahead and lift our flaps. And we are officially off the ground. Alright, so I'm just going to fly out a couple miles here, do a 180, and then show you a real basic descent and landing onto the runway. Or just working on getting lined up with the runway here. So we're below 200 knots, so I'm going to go ahead and drop my landing gear and give myself some flaps. There we go. About 2 notches of flaps. And then what you want to do is look at the glide slope indicator, which is this light right here. An up arrow like that means we are a little lower than what it would like us to be. But that's okay. We'll actually go ahead and intercept the glide slope. So we're going to put the velocity vector just on the threshold of the runway here. And that's going to let us continue to descend. And we're going to back off the power a little bit. And the idea is you want to be descending, but not so fast that you just slam into the runway. So you just kind of keep the throttle feathered and enough power that you can see that circle there. So we're a little bit low, but not dangerously so, because you can see on the glide slope indicator it's within acceptable levels. And we're just going to gently bring it down here. Now, most landings, online or combat style landings, are not going to look like this. You're not going to be lined up from this far out. But this is just a nice way to kind of demonstrate it. Just keeping that velocity vector on the threshold of the runway. And keeping it above 130 knots. And you'll just be using gentle stick pressure to keep it there, and a little bit of power if you see it sliding. But we're looking pretty good here. And then as we get real close to the ground, you're going to see me pull up a bit and do what's called a flare. And that's to bleed a little bit of extra speed and somewhat arrest the actual descent. Now we're a little above glide slope, but that's okay. We'll cut the power a little bit. And you can see us just gently coming down now. And now I'm adding a little more stick pressure to keep us falling, but the nose Pointed up, we're going to go ahead and slow down our descent a little bit with this flare, and you'll see the runway just gently show up, and I'm keeping some back pressure on the stick. We don't want to just let the nose flop over. And now we just gently let it fall. Use a little bit of brakes. I'll just tap my left and my right brakes a little bit to start slowing down. And we're just going to keep it on the side of the runway here. And now that we are around 50 knots or so, we're going to hit that nose wheel steering button on our flight stick. And we're going to slow down quite a bit here. And you're going to want to practice this a lot. Like I said, this was not a textbook landing by any stretch. We didn't do the overhead brake. We didn't do any pattern work. This is just a little template for you to check out and practice with, just getting a long, straight final onto the runway, get her lined up where we need it to be, and put it down safely. Because if you can't take off and land, you really can't fight in the A-10. So we're just going to go ahead and taxi off the runway. We're going to hook a left here. This should look familiar because we taxied out this way. And around we go. Get nice and centered. We'll get a little bit more speed. We're not going to go back to exactly where we were before, but we'll just get off the taxiway. And then if you are playing a single player mission, you need to reload, rearm, repair, or multiplayer, same kind of thing. We've got a nice little patch of concrete here. We're just going to creep up to that. And hang her right here. Being careful not to go too fast. That was just me feathering the right toe brake just a little bit so we could cut it a little sharper but also slow down. And we're going to give it a little bit of power, a little bit of left toe brake, full rudder. And that's going to get us turned around. And now we are not in anybody's way. And we'll come to a complete halt. So we're not in anybody's way. We are free to rearm, repair, refuel, log out, whatever it is that you like to do. And that is it, guys. So I will catch you guys in the next one. If you have any questions or anything, just let me know. But we'll see you in the next one. Thank you.